when we hold on to these mental justifications of anger that we hold towards other people, that has detrimental health effects on us, right? Like
Yeah.
getting to an emotional state, well, we'll say healing, but really to an emotional state of forgiveness is really difficult. In a world that often pulls us apart, More in Common brings us back to what matters. Hosted by Gerren Taylor and Keith Richardson, this isn't your average podcast. It's a challenge to think deeper, question louder, and grow further. At More in Common, we work with NFL teams, tech companies, and professionals across industries to improve communication and foster compassion. And with a focus on emotional intelligence, we aim to bring a wealth of experience to help you navigate the complexities of human connection. We've never been more connected and yet more isolated. We want to explore the roots of that tension and offer a way back to what we all need: real human connection. Enjoy the show.
And we are back. Oh, careful there, Keithy. All right?
Just
Yeah.
moving around too fast,
Yeah.
too
We don't have
too
sponsors
strong
yet,
here.
so don't go destroying stuff. So until we can get somebody
Yeah,
to
we
pay
can't
for that.
backpost. Maybe someone will reach out to us. We still got to figure that out, right?
Yeah, that's all right. We'll do that in the meeting next week. How
Yeah,
how are you today? What's happening in the world?
such a weird. So I was having this call earlier today. It's with a partner of ours who's just awesome. I mean, Allison. I was talking to Allison. For those
Yeah.
listeners out there, Allison from Echo, and like she even said to me, she's like, "Yeah, I noticed like your energy is off." It's like, yeah, it feels like nothing has gone right. And I say nothing. There have been some really strong highlights, but the overall feeling of life right now is like nothing is going right.
Mm.
And I know that's not true, but that's how it feels. And it's a miserable, it's not fun. How about, and you're experiencing a very similar
Yeah, no,
emotional state.
we were in our production meeting talking a little bit about some of that frustration. And I think that's one of the things I love about what we get to do on this show is that like we're not trying to have a show that's about pretend emotions or like everything's honky dory and like we're just gonna laugh and play sounds. We actually talk about real impactful stuff. And I think that one of the things that I'm going through um right now is this like sense of guilt sometimes about where where things are, but I'm trying to work through that, and I think that what we're gonna do today, Keith, we're gonna work through that.
We're gonna work through that. Tell me, like, that's interesting. Like, hey, let's call back to the check-in, right?
It's a good
Guilt
call.
being one of the emotions on it. Like, rate it for me, and I'm gonna ask for context. What's going on?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like it's probably a 6 right now. And context wise, I would say it's more about feeling like there were moves that could have been made that weren't, and then you don't know what happens after that. Um, like the what if game, so to speak. But what I'm trying to work on, and what I think that I want to dig into a little bit more, is that self forgiveness, the meeting myself where I'm at, and being able to
Mm,
for
mm.
let that stuff go.
Dude, I feel that sentiment. Like, I wouldn't say my guilt is high. It hit spikes for that same reason. Like, as you know, anytime you're trying to achieve something and it's just like not happening, whether it's making a sports team, whether it's finding a job, whether it's building a business, whether it's whatever, and you're in this state of getting there, you're not there yet, right? And there are more no's and more failures along that path. It's like super easy. I feel that same thing is like that sentiment of, man, this, I really thought this thing was going to work out, then it didn't. And why wasn't I diversifying my opportunities in that process?
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know about you, because I'm with you on this mental forgiveness element. Like for me, I'm lacking a lot of joy. Like I love doing this, so it gives me an opportunity to just be in a space. Like for me, just as much as I'm hoping it is for the audience, but like that malaise, like and it's and it's this balance, because like I love being with my kids. I love being with my wife. Like I have some things that are really, really grounding for me in that love and gratitude spectrum. But like I'm not getting a whole lot of validation that in return, right? Like that's the nature of relationships in life. I hope, I don't ever want a partner who's like, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best every day, because then I just won't believe you. And
Right.
kids certainly don't tell you, yeah, dad, I'm learning from you. This is working. Like you're just same problem, like same thing over and over and over again. And like I'm not in a space where I'm like feeling like I'm contributing anything to anybody. So like my joy, I realized this over the weekend. Like my joy is in the toilets,
Mm.
multiple toilets, in the toilet, that right. And it's just it's really hard to get to a place where it's like, okay, sometimes it's just really hard to get to a place where you're good, you know.
And how do you feel like you are navigating the self forgiveness in that space?
I don't know. Like I've this has been one of the, I think, biggest challenges for me, is oftentimes because of the way I present myself or the way I communicate or the things I talk about. I often am a stabilizing or grounding force for other people.
Right.
But when I'm not grounded, it throws a lot of people. So like I share it with some very few people. I do talk about it. Um, I I try to put myself in positions that spike joy a little bit, so I can see the other side of the down, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's for a couple of hours in a day. Um, but it's really challenging. And like I'm not an expert. I haven't done a whole lot on forgiveness, but I did some reading and research prior to this. And like one of the things that I thought was most interesting is the difference between like mental forgiveness and emotional forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And like the mental forgiveness is just the act of forgiving, but the emotional forgiveness is the work. Like that I'm like forgiving, and it's this, it's an acceptance, right? We've talked about acceptance versus agreement before. It
Yeah.
is an emotional acceptance of what is, so you can accept the positive things in life, anchor on that gratitude, and move forward. But it's really hard. I mean, there's it's really difficult. Like how do you think about it? Like how do you navigate it for yourself, especially when you're in it right now, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, well, one, I definitely love that you're indexing on gratitude. I think that's a very important element. But I do think we should, in some ways, and what I'm trying to do for my own self is take a step back. When we were originally talking about having this as a discussion on this episode, I also kind of started digging into some of the things that I felt like were particular barriers for me, like we said, going through it at the moment. And one of the things that we talk about too within the check-in, and that I also think came up as an important part of this discussion, is one of the barriers that even in a study, in developmental psychology, article about shame and guilt being strong barriers to personal forgiveness. And again, defining the difference between the two, and which one you're experiencing, but also that the these are very distinct blockers for one's ability to even engage in self forgiveness.
How does it for you, like you're in this space, because I think there's also this element, like, especially as we talk about connecting with others, right? And so much of the nuance of everyday interactions is rooted in the fact that you might be talking to people who you talk to a lot, and all of a sudden you're in this place for a sustained period of time and you talk to that person again, and it affects how you see them, it affects how they see you, and it affects the interaction and connection, which can lead to actions that might lead to more guilt and shame, because now you're not just treating yourself poorly, you're treating other people poorly. How does Have you noticed how that's showing up for you at this time?
It's a very interesting question. Um, but I think I experience it differently.
Uh,
I do tend to withdraw more during these periods and engage less, both remotely and in person with community as I go through that um, experience. Because I think I fear what you're saying. Like
Fair enough.
I'd rather not have that occur. So thus, in order to prevent it, I withdraw.
Does that further a loneliness element of it for you, and like even create more guilt and shame, or shame, depending on
It can.
uh,
I believe that it is. It's to an extent. Per what we would say like episode, I guess, or per interaction. It depends on how far withdrawn I may get in that time period, and therefore what I stop doing or which responsibilities I should be doing that I'm not anymore. More affects kind of that level of the cycle of guilt. And I'm not
yeah.
saying I haven't been there before, right? Where you're like you already feel so shitty that you stop doing stuff, which makes you feel shittier. Um, but I do think, as part of my process, I don't fear isolation in that sense. I do think that sometimes for me it's important to turn off external noises, and like kind of go in and deal with those things. And sometimes that's internal dialogue, right? Like sometimes that's like going through it, and maybe you talk shit to yourself for a little while and you talk yourself out of it, and then you shake it off and you move on to the next thing. But I
Yeah, I
do
think,
think being afraid of engaging in that part only prolongs it.
yeah, it prolongs it, right? Like I think, having young children at home puts this like shining light on all of it for me all the time.
Yeah.
Um, because I'm so low in these certain areas, my sadness is up. I'm feeling that, like, shit's just not going to work out, feeling defeated, feeling beat up, and that causes me to have less patience with my children, and that less patience creates higher tension with them. Maybe I lash out on them, or I just don't have it, and then that creates guilt. This happened to me last night, at bedtime, because bedtime was a hot mess and I just didn't have the patience for it. And then I lashed out, and then it was like, man, then I have to, then I have to go to the apology state for my daughter, but then I feel like I'm just like it further perpetuates that lack of value. It's like, oh, I'm just failing at all things right now. Nothing is succeeding. And getting to that state of self-forgiveness, man, it's just really hard, right? And like
Yeah.
forgiveness is a funny thing, because it's very connected to gratitude. And if we can get to a state of forgiveness, right? Like in my reading, it activates our parasympathetic nervous system. So we're in a calmer state. It improves heart health and it reduces stress. But if you're acting in a way or, just talking about forgiving somebody else and you feel a sense of injustice or that injustice isn't reconciled or, you don't want to perpetuate continued bad behavior. Like it is all part of the uh, process. And it's not just about, yep, I forgive myself, right? Like it's really digging in. And what I love about what you're saying is like it's an awareness like of your own emotional health, not just your mental health. How how do you how do you look at the difference? And it seems like your emotional health is you're fairly aware of it. But I mean, would you say that? And would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah. I think that, you know, part of what we try to practice and part of what I have been doing, even as I became a part of this show, is trying to practice emotional awareness and emotional intelligence in that sense.
Do you see the difference in the two? Of like, because, there is a strong conversation around mental health, right? There's a very weak conversation around emotional health.
Hmm. Hmm.
Do
I mean,
you, yeah, how do you see it within yourself?
I feel that they're connected in the sense that mental health is the result of your emotional health over time in some ways, right? Like if your emotional state is in a certain way over time, this is absent of like genetic, mental diseases and stuff like that. I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
like
No, this
stuff
is
that's
mental
developed
health.
and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But in that sense, yeah, I do believe that your emotional health can be more of a day to day, whereas your mental health is more of the long trajectory. And if you're aware of or working on your emotional health, then you can protect your mental health over the long term, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's just something to, as we talk about this and the state of guilt and really understanding and parsing. Like it took me, and I did a self check-in over the weekend, and it took me an hour and a half to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it took me about 25 minutes just to get into it. Like, and at first it was a mental exercise. Like, what am I doing? Right. I decided to go for a walk, disconnect from my phone, not have any conversations, right? Just managing the inputs and managing my thoughts. This is very much mental health. But it's interesting, the brain. Like, we like talking about the brain. The limbic system is generally the overall system of parts in your brain. It includes the amygdala and other pieces, that is responsible for emotional processing. And that whole system processes 9 million pieces of information per second. 9 million pieces of information per, like, in contrast, our prefrontal cortex and our logical processing, we process 40 pieces of information per second. Like, so much of what our brain is processing. Oh, by the way, total processing power of the brain is 11 million pieces of information per second. That's the emotional center is doing so much of the work. And to your point, like, it influences how we think, how we act, what we do because of how we feel. And like taking that hour and a half to recognize, like, yeah, I feel a lot of love and gratitude, but I feel no joy, none, zero. Sadness is like a 7. Like, what is all of this? It doesn't necessarily, like, that awareness helps me understand what it is. So my actions aren't reactive to what it is, right? Like, okay, how do we keep moving? How do we keep doing the things? How do we just, what do I need to do to manage my environment so that I can manage the emotional state that I'm in so it doesn't get worse,
Right.
or I don't think worse about it, right? And going back to that, like, difference between mental forgiveness and emotional forgiveness, it's like starting the process with the mental conversations, like, you're okay, like, you're going to be fine, you screwed up, or you did this, or you yelled at your kid, or you didn't put in the effort to find different opportunities, and that one opportunity fell apart in your hands. So you can get to the space of the emotional processing of it all. I mean, it's just hard, man. Like, it's a journey. It's long and it's freaking hard.
But I think that's
You know?
important because you were mentioning earlier, and this is very well documented too, right? Like there's the Journal of Behavioral Medicine, there's Journal of Emotional Intelligence, there's documented evidence about forgiveness being good for your health and good for
Yeah.
your emotional intelligence. Um, and so what I think maybe to turn to talk about is just how to practice it, because like you said, it's not easy. It takes maybe some framing. Maybe there's people here who haven't even like, in the audience who haven't really even defined what it looks like all the way yet, what the process, what the steps are for practicing self-forgiveness.
So how, like, what are some of the things that you do to manage this for yourself so you can get to, because to your point, like, think about forgiveness. Oftentimes it's forgiving someone else for wronging you.
Mm-hmm.
And like, when we hold on to all of the mental justifications for, um when we hold on to these mental justifications of anger, that we hold towards other people, that has detrimental health effects on us, right? Like,
Yeah.
getting to an emotional state, well, we'll say healing, but really to an emotional state of forgiveness is really difficult for other people, let alone for ourselves. Like, so how do you work towards that so you can process the guilt and all that other stuff?
Yeah, no, I totally agree that it's different approaches when it comes to forgiving other people versus forgiving yourself. I think that's it's completely distinct. But there's like something I picked up along the way. I don't even remember where exactly, probably therapy years ago. But it's acknowledge, reframe, let go. So acknowledge what happened, accept, you know what I mean? Whatever it is that you're mad at yourself about. Reframe the loss or however you experience it and figure out what you're supposed to learn from it, because there's always some learning there. And then let it go, because it happened and there's no going back on it. Unfortunately, there's no picking it up. uh there's no retake, but there is the ability to go to know that it doesn't define you, that things happen, and that our life is millions, myriads of these experiences, things that happen, and you're not defined by any one of them in particular.
Mm. I like that.
Yeah, I
I
think it's
wouldn't
something
say, oh,
helpful.
go ahead.
No, no, I think it's something I found helpful for me along the way there.
How long's that, like, what's that journey like for you? I
Oof.
mean, obviously it seems like it's really easy to just throw that out there, but what's that
Right.
journey like for you? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't mean you do it once, right? Like it means you
Right.
do it when it occurs, when the thought occurs, that's that's what you do. You reframe, you acknowledge it, you reframe it, and then you try to let it go. And then it stops occurring so much, I believe. Is my experience with it. Like the frequency goes down, especially, distance from events and such. But that is kind of what I consider the toolkit when those thoughts occur.
Mm, mm. I like that. Yeah, I have the tendency, like, weaving in the emotional health of it, right? And I'm thinking about like just my current state. To your
Yeah.
point, it's not acknowledging like the event or the thing. It is being aware of like, and I use the check-in on myself, that we went through several episodes ago to kind of index and find where the points of tension are, right? Because it, it's generally like state of where I am right now, it's this macro state.
Uh,
Like it's persistent, it's not going away because, the change that I seek, as we say, suffering, right? Suffering is a desire to want things to be different. Like, and the change that I seek is big and I'm not getting there. So, what is that external stimulus doing to my internal state? So, like, the check in becomes so important. And it's not like, oh, let me do a check in and everything shifts. It's let me do a check in and see where I am today and see where it shifted to tomorrow. So then tomorrow I do it again and it's like, not much has changed. But now I'm aware. I can start to define and pinpoint and plug things in. Like last week, my sadness was at a 10, but I didn't do a check-in right away. Like I waited a few days and it just felt overwhelming. So like going through the check-in process allows me to hone in and narrow in and then find the pieces that are like holding me up that I can index on. Like and then I can look at what is actually good. So I don't see everything as defeated and bad. And then working towards that. Like, is it something that I did mentally start the forgiveness process, right? Like, okay, just like talking through it, right? Because our mental processes also influence our emotional state as our emotional state influences our mental process. So just hijacking one of them, right? And trying to send me in a better path. And then like the acceptance and let go, like the let go is the last piece of it, right? It's the hardest piece for me anyway. But the acceptance piece, okay, this is where it is. This is where I am. And it sucks right now. I don't like how I feel. I talk about it. I share it. Like I have my peeps, and hopefully I'm able to let it go for just a moment until it comes back, and then work through it again. And it eventually, like you said, it's time, right? Eventually finds its way, or circumstances change that align more to where you're trying to go, and then you're in a good state of being, right? And then you do it all over again the next time. um, but the check-in is such a critical part for me, and being aware of all that.
for some reason, when you say peeps, I feel like you're hanging out with 2002 Nelly. I don't know why.
I need my band-aid.
I said, down, 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 baby. But no,
Man, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say we need to do another check in. We should probably bring that in more. Maybe we start checking in guests along the way
I like it.
and something like that. I think it's an important tool. And I will. I never really thought about checking myself in as much as I probably should. Just I do it for certain emotions, but I don't know if I go through the whole
The
gamut
whole
the
thing.
whole
Yeah.
time. And I think that is important as well, like the whole thing.
It's harder to do, like, because
Yeah.
having someone else check you in, it's just stabilizing, but like getting yourself there. But man, I've really enjoyed, like, because one of the elements I think that's so important, and I want to bring it all together, that's so important about this conversation is like how all of this stuff that we all experience, number one, right? It's mental health, it's emotional health, it's reactions. It's ultimately how we treat other people and the energy we give off and how other people treat us. And it can validate or dispel cognitive biases that we have towards other people, right? Like when you're in a state like this, you have the tendency to be like, I hate people. And like if we hang on to that too long, it can be destructive to our social ecosystems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just in a, oh, it hurt friendships. No, it's like it's all of it. And so being able to do that just gives you an opportunity to like better meet people where they are, meet yourself where you are, and engage or not engage, but just
Right.
having that awareness. Cause like I'm not interested in engaging with people right now too much unless it's like for very specific purposes. Because I don't want to lash out. You know, I don't
Right.
have the emotional control right now to not let a triggered moment dictate the future of any circumstance, right?
But letting go of resentment doesn't mean excusing the behavior. It means releasing its hold on you. And that includes yourself.
Yeah, so good. I love this conversation. Like shit's hard. It's hard for all of us. Not everything goes well all the time. I think sometimes when we're having these conversations, it just comes off, hey, we're good. We got this shit figured out. We're mastered it. We are masters of our domain. Nothing ever breaks. Nope.
Things fall apart
Things fall apart. You
as
got to
they
figure
want to
out how
do.
to
But
build them
hey,
back up.
we'll keep the conversation going. I think we have another one of these that we should talk more about, just self forgiveness, mental awareness, mental health, and we'll start digging in more on these topics. And I think honestly, this show is really about people taking away tricks, the practical ideas. That's why we hope you can share it with your friends or share it with your community. We really do appreciate it as well.
Like it, comment. We like what we're doing. I hope you do too. So, more people, the better we all are. So, anyhow,
Right, keep practicing
keep
out there.
practicing.
This is
Small
the More in
things.
Common podcast. I'm Gerren Taylor. That's Keith Richardson. We'll see you next week and have fun.
Fun.